Professor Chauhan, your former Vice Chancellor, Dr. G.N. Singh, Dr. Aishwarya Reddy, Dr. Tharani, the distinguished personalities sitting in the first row, and others, Professor Rupkar, Dr. Atul, Dr. S.L. Nasaji, and many others sitting, my colleagues, Dr. Harvinder Popli and Dr. Gaurav Jain. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Vandana Sethi for giving us this opportunity to be partner with your institute. I distinctly remember Dr. Aishwarya Reddy was also there when we signed the MOU that we will work together, and we have been doing it. Of course, I could not do too much, but I have tried to see that there's something is done. Now, when we were discussing that how to have the conference on the national education policy, there were lot many challenges even to organize this event. COVID itself was a challenge, but more than that, we had other things also. So I have tried to give today, in very brief, I would like to give glimpses of what this NEP means and how we can, as such. So I'm supposed to speak loudly, and of course, not that loudly that last bench can hear, but okay. Then to develop in technology. So this is the purpose. And if I go next, we will find that slide changes. Okay, next slide. See, there have been several policies, there has been revolutions. I remember when 2008, Modi ji, he gave me this sentence in particular, that education should be a weapon to fight poverty, social stigma, and superstition. That is clearly he told. Next slide. When we go further, next slide please. Next. Okay, next slide. Okay. Now we have been using these words, Gyan, Vigyan, Gurukul, Vidyalaya, Mahavidyalaya. But unfortunately, this word I never liked, Vidyarthi. Sometimes because they are becoming Pariksharthi rather than Vidyarthi. Well, anyway, what our Honorable Prime Minister is trying to do is to link the Gurukuls with the current education. We'll see how. Next. Now, coming to next slide, please. Now, this National Education Policy 2020 is something which has been going on for years. If I recollect, the Macaulay, he introduced the English in the education system in India, pre-independence India. The first education policy was by the Hunter. But after the independent India, this was Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan who did it, and it was, I'm sorry for this, made in 1953. UGC was conceptualized and the act came in 1956. The first education policy was laid down by the then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. And therein the concept of deemed universities and research universities came in. We all know this. And later, equal access, greater access, quality, excellence, relevance, and value education. All these things were added. Now these things, so that's why what we call reservation policy to all that, and it came, and the quality parameters, the beginning was made, and then the Mashelkar, Professor Mashelkar made science and technology policy. UGC made National Knowledge Consortium, wherein the choice-based credit system was one of the key features. And then Gyanam Committee. And now this national education is much more vibrant than all what has happened. Next slide. So if we go further into it, next slide please. If we that there are two main facets. There are 5 chapters, 5 main sections. One is about the school education. We will not discuss. I think I will next slide we can come. The higher education we are let us come to. There are several things which have been proposed for the school education, but next slide please. The higher education now we are coming to. In the higher education, one goal, one target is gross enrollment ratio. I will not discuss that also because all of you are sitting, they are technocrats, science graduates. So the multidisciplinary, flexible curriculum, choice-based credit system in the real sense to be implemented. But very important point has been added is multiple exit policy. This is a challenge which we need to discuss how it can be really formalized. Professional education will be integral part of higher education. Unfortunately, in the 2019, they have written that professional education, the bodies like PCI, AICTE, all those councils should restrict only for the practice and not for the higher education. Still the debate is going on, but as of now, the mandate was that this professional education should also be part of higher education rather than keeping it with them. Well, anyway, this is still a matter of debate. I will not go again into that. Governance, light but tight regulation, National Research Foundation, this is another one. So like RUSHA which was formed, it is another one. So Rashtriya Shiksha Ayog, these are the things which have come. Next slide please. So accordingly to that, if we see, there are mandates and themes which are given. So we are going to have a debate on both the things in these coming 2 days to see that the challenge, the biggest challenge is how to implement this national education policy. So next slide. If I go further into it, please next slide. The next slide, previous year. Actually, when I was the Vice Chancellor in MS University, I was given this task to come out with the policy for Gujarat. We gave this. Some of the things were integrated, not the multiple exit, but other things were integrated in this policy, which I was recommending. Next slide. Of course, the clear-cut allied electives, core electives, allied electives, like that, all these things were given, and extension activities. What the new national education policy says, ancient Indian education should also be integrated. That feature is also very much there, what we have told. And it was, of course, this was the model for the arts, science and commerce students, but it is very much applicable. Next. Now, so the recommendations of that was the sound foundation with critical thinking and writing skill. We saw Skill India, which have come up. The mathematical thing, I think everybody, computer, philosophy, all that. But at that time, the biggest challenge before us was that we were not prepared. The infrastructure was not available. Well, next slide. The time has changed. We wanted, see, the philosophy was the same, that what was there in Nalanda and Takshashila, it is clearly written that liberal art is not something like an arts college or something different. It is integration of philosophy, grammar, medicine, astronomy, mathematics, dance, everything. It was there in the Nalanda and Takshashila. Same thing has to be incorporated in the education in one way or other. That has been the mandate. So, Vanabhatta Kadambari, which is written 64 Kala, it doesn't mean the Kala of dance and all that. No. Every part of education is a Kala. That's what the next slide. So, these things are to be integrated with the modern technology. So, all these technologies which have come in, next slide, they have to be integrated, and we all know that in last 10 years, all these things have emerged. I have not to discuss the smart classrooms to anything. Next slide. We all know in these last 7-8 years in particular, how vibrant MOOCs and SWAYAM has been there. They are to be utilized. Now one of the colleague of mine was saying, sir हमारी फार्मेसी में क्यों नहीं है ये सब चीज़ें MOOCs का और वो MOOCs के नाम पर only we have got research methodology or like that. Why not here? Yes, we are right. But I mean, in one of my NAC inspections, somebody was asking, how can we take advantage of this? I said, you apply, that's all, to UGC, that's it, and you will get it. You write to AICT with the proposal that this is what we want to introduce. You will get it. So efforts have to be made. Next slide. Now we all know that how these MOOCs have been used. But you see, the second part, business, computer, and science, they have used the most. If you see the health sciences, it is from the bottom. See, this is the great indication that we all, because I can see that majority is from the engineering plus the pharmacy also and health sciences. Please take note of this and you can go further. Next slide. Now, if you go next, hello, can I have the next slide, please? So, I will not go into that how the mobile usage has come and वो बोलते हैं ना रही सही कसर जो हमारी होती थी कि कैसे online classes and all that की जाएं और how to have these uses of the technology. This COVID has given everything now. Next slide. So as a result of this, I always try to see कि ना सुनना ना बोलना ना देखना. Next slide. The computer has added that, all the three together. That is the thing. Next slide. So fourth monkey has come. So let us not be that. Next slide. So next slide, that like I am a pharmacy and I can see a large gathering of pharmacy. I could see as the impact, certain things have been lost also. The real experimental skills, whether subject-wise I will say, have been lost. Now how to maintain this with this? So online classes is not the only answer. Online classes have to be with the offline practicals also. Next slide. Well, even as a researcher, people want to take the research project wherein the student has not to even hold one test tube. That is the unfortunate part. So everybody is becoming a laptop researcher rather than laptop researcher. Nobody wants to go to the lab. Laptop researcher we need to have, and that's how we are going further. Okay, so next slide please. So when we want to think all, NEP is targeted to have world-class universities, for which we have to understand what is the higher education, further education, globalization, internationalization, all these things have to be understood. Next slide. So all this, there are several features, several things are there. Next slide. We will do that, and we are in the area of currently in the fourth industrial revolution, wherein there is a fusion of all these things. That is what is needed. Next slide. So this is being developed, and because of, what is fourth revolution? One can see. Next slide. The whole thing will be that in the healthcare, we have to bring all that. Next slide. The most beneficiary have been of the fourth industrial revolution is healthcare system. Next slide. Now, in this, like in COVID, before COVID, nobody was knowing this genome testing. Now everybody knows what is RT-PCR. This is the change. Next slide. So, whether it is medical, whether it is engineering, whether it is pharmacy or management, everywhere the disruption, digital disruption has got, and there are changes. Next slide. And in these circumstances, innovation is the key, which is going to be the part of in this today's program. Next slide. So breakthrough. So this whole COVID itself has changed many things. One of them is the biotechnology revolution. Next slide. So this biotechnology will need all integrated things. I need not to discuss. Next slide. And here comes finally the innovation. Next slide. So at all levels, innovation is not simply that identification, we have to take it further with these technology. Next slide. And hence, we have to think beyond imagination. Go ahead, next slide. And so challenges will remain. We have to implement, that is the only solution, and how to implement, that is what is the point of theme of our conference. How to implement and globally transform the education. Next slide. And every stakeholder has their own things, whether it is a student, public or private. Next slide. And here, more opening, maybe next slide, it may happen that we will have online universities directly. No class, no infrastructure, directly online universities will start coming in. Some of the universities have started taking the faculty from other countries. That is what is happening. Well, I will not go into detail. They are different. This is the future which is going to happen. We have to debate on the next slide. And hence, we have to think of twinning programs, collaboration with the other things, having the campuses in other countries. Next slide. And that's what finally, emergency knows no rule. This policy was to come in 2019, implement, but this COVID has changed. The next slide. So, in all, the theme of today's conference, as we have discussed with Dr. Vandana Shetty, it is going to be think about this national education policy in the line of implementation, and implementation with the distinctiveness for the concerns, for the specifically for engineering, for the specifically for the healthcare, management or even the law, for which our Lloyd is very well known. I wish you all good luck and thank you again for coming.